My parents gave their entire inheritance to my sister, but she blew it all on her lazy husband. Now they expect me to take care of them in exchange for a share. Ever felt invisible to your own family? Like you were just a ghost in your own home? For years I did. But one New Year's Eve, after my kids were treated like background noise at a family party, something broke inside me, and it sparked a quiet, devastating plan that changed everything. My name is Jack. I'm 35 years old. I'm divorced and a dad to two amazing boys, Ethan, who just turned 10, and Noah, who's 8 and far too sophisticated for his age. We live in this little rented house just outside the city. It's nothing extravagant, but it's warm. It's ours. And most importantly, it's quiet. After everything that had happened with my family in the past few years, I clung to that stillness like a lifeline. So, when my mother's name popped up on my phone 3 days before New Year's Eve, I almost let it ring. We hadn't been very close lately. And by lately, I mean ever since my ex-wife left, and my family made it crystal clear which of us they believed was to blame. Spoiler alert, it wasn't her. My mother has always been the type of person who picks a golden child and then builds an entire universe around them. My younger brother, Logan, has always been that kid in our family. Logan, the achiever. Logan, the golden boy. Logan has the perfect marriage, a career in finance, and his children wear matching sweaters on their Christmas cards. Meanwhile, I'm the son who, at least, tries. I mainly work in IT as a freelancer, which, to them, sounds suspiciously like being unemployed but pretending. I'm also the one who doesn't show up to every cookout. The one who separates himself. The one who never quite fits in with the rest of them. But it's okay. I quit trying to fit in long ago. So, I was surprised when my mother called, and even more so when her voice was light and joyful, as if we hadn't spoken between clenched teeth since August. "Jack, dear," she chirped. "Listen, we're having a large family New Year's celebration at our place, a countdown and everything. Bring the lads. It'll be something amazing." I said nothing for a second. I just listened to the artificial twinkle in her voice and waited for the catch. There's always a catch. I mean, the kids will enjoy it, right? She added rapidly. We have sparklers, food, and a photo booth set up. We just believed it was time. It would mean a lot to your brother and father, right? Not to her or me, you notice. But to Logan. I should have said no. I should have made up an excuse, like arrangements with friends, a trip, anything. But Noah, listening in from the kitchen, piped up, "Are we going to Grandma's for cookies?" And just like that, I gave in. "Okay," I said slowly and cautiously. "We'll come." "Wonderful," she said. And with that, the call terminated. No. May I bring anything? No. How about the boys? Just another item off her list. The next day, I let the kids choose what they wanted to wear. Noah wanted a superhero cape. Ethan chose a flannel and a clip-on tie because, as he put it, it's sophisticated, but not overdone. We prepared cookies from scratch, not just slice and bakes. Chocolate chip and snickerdoodles. The boys splattered flour all over the counter, and I didn't care. They were so excited. They hadn't seen their cousins for a while. They were staying up late for the first time ever to see the ball drop. And for the first time in months, I saw that ecstatic look in their eyes. I'll own it. I became hopeful. The night of the 31st, we arrived shortly after 7:30 p.m. The home was lit up with string lights. I could hear music, laughter, and the faint pop of what sounded like champagne bottles. I carried the cookie tray with one hand while holding Noah's hand in the other. Ethan bounced after us, chatting about how many cookies we should eat or give out. I rang the doorbell and waited. Finally, approximately 3 minutes later, the door opened. It was my cousin Brooke. She looked astonished, as if we had arrived early to a party that had already begun. "Oh," she said. "Hey, Jack, you made it." "Yeah," I replied, smiling despite myself. "We brought cookies." "Oh," she said, looking at the dish as if it were a science experiment. "Cool. Come in, I suppose." I sensed something wasn't right the instant we went inside. The home was crowded from floor to ceiling with people. Decorations everywhere. Food tables already emptied. Music louder than I had anticipated. But what really struck me was this. Everyone was already partying, toasting, dancing, and even starting the countdown early for the younger kids. There were empty drinks on every surface, present wrapping paper on the floor, and the unmistakable feel of a party that had been going on for hours. Yet, no one turned to greet us. Nobody remarked, "Hey." Glad you made it. Or the boys are here. Not even my mother. I surveyed the living room. Logan was standing near the fireplace, drink in hand, joking with his wife and some of their friends. Their children were already in pajamas, cuddled up on the couch with plates of cookies next to them. My parents were in the kitchen mid-toast with a few aunts and uncles, all beaming as if it was the finest night of the year. I stepped in a little farther. There were no unoccupied chairs, not even a seat at the children's table or the snack table. There wasn't a single cookie left. I turned to Brooke. Where do we put the cookies? She blinked. Oh, I suppose they've already had dessert. You could simply, I don't know, put them down someplace. Did you eat dessert? I asked. The invitation says 7:30, correct? Brooke appeared uneasy. Yeah, but people came early. Right. People. Not us. I led the boys into the living room. Ethan quickly observed the vacant couch and asked, where do we sit? Noah gripped the platter harder and murmured, where's Grandma? Logan looked up, spotted us, and politely nodded. No smile. No, hey bro. Just a nod as if we were guests who had walked into the wrong Airbnb. My mother arrived over a minute later. She appeared frantic, drink in hand, cheeks flushed. Oh, you're here, she remarked, as if we had come uninvited. You said 7:30, I said thoughtfully. Well, yes, but people arrived earlier, and we had just started, she said, trailing off. I examined the boys' clothing and then the cookie tray. Oh, cookies. That's nice. She didn't even look at the boys. No hugs. No, I missed you. No. Come sit, let me get you guys something. Nothing. And that's when I understood it. It wasn't for us. It never was. We weren't asked to attend the party. We were urged to check a box, to indicate that they attempted, and to give them a cause to feel like they had done their part. So when they recounted stories of family and togetherness, they could add, well, Jack came. But we weren't meant to be a part of it. My sons were simply background noise. Forgotten. I gazed down at them. Ethan was silent, clutching his tie as if he suddenly regretted wearing it. Noah stared at the platter of cookies, still full and untouched. The enthusiasm they'd carried with them, the exhilaration, the astonishment, was leaking out of their cheeks in real time. I've made a decision. I turned to my mother. We'll go out, I said. She blinked. What? But you just arrived. There's nowhere to sit. The youngsters are hungry, and it appears that the countdown is already underway. It was just for the little kids, she explained. We were going to do another one at midnight. It's okay. I responded calmly and steadily. We'll just go. I scooped up the cookie tray, carefully escorted the boys to the door, and then walked out without looking back. We got inside the car. I didn't say anything for a minute, just started driving. Have we done something wrong? Noah interrupted the stillness. My throat clenched. No, buddy. Not at all. Ethan was silent for a moment. They didn't even say hi. Nope, I said gently. They didn't. We went home. I allowed them to remain up anyhow. We saw the ball drop from our sofa. Only the three of us ate the cookies. I even let them pop some inside party poppers I had purchased at the last minute from the dollar store. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. The next morning, I awoke to a voicemail from my grandfather. His voice shook, and what he said altered everything. When I say I gazed at my phone for 4 minutes before playing the voicemail, I'm not exaggerating. It arrived shortly after 6:40 a.m., which was unusual in itself. My grandfather wasn't typically up so early and didn't call anyone, especially me. He's the type of man who still writes checks by hand and ships Christmas greetings with real stamps. The thought of leaving a voicemail, especially before morning, seemed purposeful. I played it. At first, there was only quiet rustling and a breath before his voice became low and harsh. Jack, this is Grandpa. I understand it's early. I didn't want to wake the boys, but I needed to say something before I lost my nerve. I sat up taller in bed, my pulse increasing. I witnessed what occurred last night. I saw everything. He paused as if to compose himself. I heard a gentle clink. Maybe his glasses or mug hit the table. You went in beaming, and nobody said anything. Your kids appeared proud, then bewildered. I saw you go away without a fuss, and your mother merely shrugged as if it didn't matter, as if you didn't exist. Another pause. I should have said something then. I did not. I froze. I saw everything, and said nothing since that's what we do in our family, right? We stay silent. We don't stir the pot. But that is how the poison spreads. I see it now. He breathed shakily. You are a decent man, Jack. You are a greater father than I ever was. Better than your father ever attempted to be. Do not let them make you feel tiny. I am sorry I didn't say it sooner. The voicemail stopped. I must have played it 10 times. It didn't erase what had happened, but it did break something open. Not just the hurt, which I had come to accept, but also the rage. The constant coiled-up rage I'd been suppressing for years, pretending it didn't matter. I pretended I was over it, but I was not. Not even close. Not after what came next. My mom texted me that morning right after breakfast. No welcome or apology. Simply, are you unhappy about something? I looked at the screen in bewilderment. I am upset over something. As if we hadn't strolled into an event we weren't supposed to be a part of. As if my sons weren't entirely disregarded by their own grandparents. As if we hadn't walked away quietly because anything louder would have been humiliating. I didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, I spent the morning with my sons. We watched cartoons, played Uno, and I let them have leftover cookies for lunch. I needed time to think about what I wanted to say and whether I wanted to say anything at all. But the cosmos didn't give me that option. Logan called at around 1 p.m. That in itself was unusual. He never phoned unless it was for a transaction, a query about Dad's medication, or to see if I could help Mom with her email again. I almost didn't respond, but then I thought, good. Let us hear it from the source. Hey, I said bluntly. Dude, he said, as if we were old friends catching up. What happened last night? I blinked. You mean the point where no one saved us a chair, or when we weren't even recognized? Oh, come on. He laughed. It wasn't that bad. It was worse. He sighed as though I were the difficult one. Jack, you arrived late. Everyone was already in party mood. You told us to come at 7:30. Well, certainly, but folks had already arrived by 5:30. You know how these things go. It wasn't like anyone was attempting to avoid you, except for the part where you saw us and didn't say a word. He went silent for a beat. Look, he eventually replied. Mom told me you stormed out without saying goodbye. That's not cool, dude. You kind of caused a scene. I didn't make a scene, I stated sternly. I quietly left so my kids wouldn't have to cry in front of your perfect little party. Do you believe this is about favoritism again? He inquired, his voice taking on a little edge. Because you're always playing the victim. Just because you don't show up doesn't mean we're the bad guys. I laughed bitterly. I did show up, and that was the problem. He carried on for a while after that. The typical things. How I'm overly sensitive. How I overthink things. How he has a family and cannot constantly look after your feelings. I hung up before saying something I would regret, but I did text my mother afterward. I kept it brief. Do not worry. You won't have to pretend to include us anymore. She said, I'm not sure what you want from me, Jack. We did our best. You're constantly seeking for anything to get outraged about. That's when I knew I wasn't going to walk away this time. I was going to recall every slight excuse and sugar-coated dismissal, and I wasn't going to let it go any longer. Over the next week, our quiet grew protracted and unpleasant. No check-ins, no apologies. No, how are the boys? Even my father, who typically sends a stern Happy New Year text, said nothing. Then came the last straw. Noah had painted a drawing in school. One of those my family art efforts, stick figures, clasping hands, and everyone smiles. He handed it to me after supper. Proud as anything. I glanced at it and grinned. That's great, buddy. Who is who? He pointed to each figure one by one. That's you. That is me. That's Ethan. And that is Grandpa. I frowned. Which Grandpa? Your grandfather? He nodded. The one who called. I halted. How about Grandma and the other Grandpa? He shrugged. They are not in it. They didn't say hello. That struck me harder than any insult ever could. My sons weren't simply being ignored. They were learning from it. Internalizing it. Identifying who was important and who was not. And I was not going to let them grow up believing that stillness equaled love. Those breadcrumbs were enough. That weekend, I took them to visit Grandpa. My mother's father, the person who left the voicemail, lives in a small assisted living facility about 50 minutes away. We brought him soup, puzzles, and cookies that he did not get to try on New Year's. When he opened the door, his eyes became misty. He hugged the boys as if they were made of gold. I'm sorry, he repeated over lunch. I should have said something earlier. You deserved better than this. Then he said something else, which changed everything. You know, he said slowly, your grandmother had this box, basically a file box. We had old photos, documents, and the like. She used to say, "One day this will be Jack's." She was the only person who witnessed how you were treated. My breath caught. She left it to me before she died. I think she knew your mother would not give it to you. They said you'd need it when you're ready to remember who you are. I wasn't sure what to say. He went into his closet and emerged with a weathered gray plastic box. Inside were photos of me as a child, smiling with messy hair and always holding a book or hugging my dog. There were report cards, a copy of my college scholarship letter, old birthday cards with her loopy handwriting, and receipts for checks she'd sent me during difficult times marked, "Don't tell your mother." There was also a letter. It was only a few paragraphs long, written in her careful cursive. "Jack, I understand they don't always see you, but I do. You have the biggest heart in the family. You are not loud, but you are consistent, not flashy, and kind. That is more important than anything. I want you to remember that you will one day create something beautiful. They do not get to decide who you are." Something broke loose in my chest. It was the first time I had sobbed in years. Not the furious or bitter type of sobbing. The sort that discreetly releases sadness so that it does not swamp you. When I returned home that night, I placed the box beneath my bed and opened a notepad. I documented everything. Every moment, insult, every cold shoulder. They always acted as if I were invisible and my children were an afterthought. I wasn't sure why, but it seemed like the start of something. I didn't seek vengeance. Not yet. But I wanted the truth. I wanted to see everything clearly because for the first time in my life, I did not feel like I was the problem. And then, only a few days later, the ultimate betrayal occurred. It wasn't loud. It wasn't nasty on the surface, but it crushed any trust one had left. I received a Facebook notice. Logan had shared images from the New Year's celebration, an entire album. "Family time" was the caption. I clicked through, bracing myself. There were photos of everyone. Mom and Dad pose with Logan's children. My cousins are clinking glasses. A cake with "Happy 2027" inscribed in silver icing. Finally, hidden at the end, a group photo in front of the fireplace. Everyone stood in rows, arms around each other, and smiled. Everyone but us. We were nowhere to be found in any of the photos, even the backdrop. It was as if we were never there. When I went down to the comments, I spotted it. The ultimate blow. One of Mom's friends said, "Looks like the entire family gathered together. I love seeing these wonderful traditions carried along." My mother responded, "Yes, everyone made it. There is so much love in one room." I looked at the sentence for a long time. So much love, except for us. That's when the decision fell into place. I was finished. Not only with the events, not simply by turning up and being forgotten. I was done pretending I wasn't keeping track, because if they intended to eliminate me, they'd have to do so quickly. I was finally ready to be seen, and I knew just where to begin. I didn't anger. I didn't yell. I didn't even message anyone from the family after seeing that Facebook post. I just closed the app, switched off my phone, and sat in quiet for a very long time. It's interesting how you may know something for years, and yet feel as if you've been hit in the chest when the final confirmation is presented to you. I had always known I was an afterthought, a shadow following after Logan's brilliance. But there was something strange about having it televised in that way, as if my boys and I had been removed from a night we had shared. A night when my youngest tugged on his clip-on tie and asked, "Do you think they're glad we came?" It shattered something in me. That was the bottom. Not because they harmed me. I was used to it. But I eventually understood I had allowed it to happen over and over. I continued going up to a rigged game, expecting the rules to alter just because I had cookies and good intentions. I stopped sleeping well after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Noah's puzzled expression. Ethan stood there, cradling the tin of cookies as if it were a peace offering no one desired. My mother's preoccupied look. Logan's apathetic nod. I saw it over and over until it crystallized into something different, something sharper. Resolve. But first, I needed to get my home in order, beginning with myself. I spent January doing something I hadn't done in a while. I put myself first. Not in an overly dramatic or egotistical way, just purposefully and quietly. I took stock of all I'd overlooked while attempting to appease people who didn't care. My finances were fine, but disorganized. So, I created a spreadsheet. Every dime I spent on items that didn't bring value was gone. I canceled the streaming services I had never utilized. I resumed dinner preparation and transferred the funds to a savings account called Stability. I examined my freelancing customers and refreshed my portfolio. I hadn't updated it in over 3 years since I was too busy fixing my father's laptop every other month or running errands for my mother under the premise of simply being helpful. I stopped doing it. If they required technical assistance, they could contact Logan. After all, he was the golden child. Surely, he could operate a printer. For the first week, I told my mother no. She requested me to stop by and assist her hang curtains, of all things. She took a long pause on the phone. "Oh," she said finally. "Well, I just thought you'd want to be included." I almost laughed. "I do, but not like that." Then I hung up. Everything became easy. Every limit I established constricted something inside me. Then came the idea. It began as a scroll on the back of my notepad, the same one I'd been using to record all of the slights and cold shoulders. I was looking through past postings when a concept hit me strong and fast. What if I made this become something real? Not a vengeance plan. Not yet. Just something personal. Something that did not center on their acceptability. You see, I'd spent years freelancing in IT, patching systems, creating processes, and doing patch jobs for folks who didn't know the difference between a hard drive and a browser tab. I had grown extremely proficient at it. I'd created networks for tiny legal firms, improved medical systems for dentist clinics, and even constructed a few internal tools for startups with no idea what they were doing. But until now, I had never constructed anything on my own. I began working evenings. After the boys went to bed, I would sit at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and some blueprint ideas. I didn't have any financing. I did not have investors. I only had information, time, and resentment, which can be a powerful drive. What I began developing was a basic dashboard, a platform that allows small business owners to track and automate their IT upkeep in one spot. Ticketing, system upgrades, network status, and license renewals, all visible, consolidated, and simplified. Something I wanted each of my past customers had when I first started working with them. I named it Backbone because that is what I have always been for others. The silent support system, the thing they relied on, disregarded, and then forgot about after it was gone. But not anymore. The initial prototype was crude. I started a closed beta in February and received 6 users. I personally contacted all of my past clients, a dentist, a tutoring service, and a bakery with an unusual fixation with Wi-Fi speeds. They loved it. One of them introduced me to another, and then another. In May, I had 32 users. By June, I was at 75 and barely keeping up with support tickets. I recruited someone part-time to help me with back-end concerns. Her name was Maya, and she had been laid off from a tech business that failed during the New Year's layoffs. We instantly clicked. She was intelligent, efficient, and like me, bored of being overlooked. That's when I began to feel it. Not a success, not pride, but it's worthwhile. Quiet, steady, and reliable value. The sort that does not seek permission or require applause. The sort that thrives in the absence of noise. I stopped looking at my family's Facebook updates. I silenced my mother's phone number for a time. When she phoned, I let it ring. When she texted, "Miss you, sweetheart," I didn't respond since she hadn't missed me. She missed the ease of having me. The version of myself who remained little, answered yes, and did not take up room. Around that moment, Grandpa phoned back. "I heard you've been busy," he remarked, laughing. "One of the nurses uses your program for her cousin's bookstore." I laughed aloud. "I'm proud of you, son." That left me speechless. I simply swallowed the knot in my throat and said, "Thank you." We began seeing him more frequently. Every other week on Saturdays, the lads would bring drawings while I would offer coffee and updates. He began telling stories, real ones, about the conflict, about my granny. He'd been keeping things secret for decades. And for the first time in my life, I began to feel as if I came from somewhere, like I wasn't just drifting between the cracks of a family that didn't have room for me. Then June arrived. Noah completed 3rd grade while Ethan graduated from 6th. We had a little celebration with just the 3 of us, plus Grandpa and Maya. Balloons are in the living room. Cupcakes, streamers. Noah donned a paper crown. Ethan gave a speech, and for the first time I didn't feel as if we were missing out. I felt entire. Then the letter arrived. It was not from my mother or Logan. It was from an attorney. At first, I suspected it was a fraud. It appeared official, stamped, sealed, addressed to my home. But I couldn't think of a single reason why I'd be receiving mail from a family attorney until I opened it. It was about my parents, specifically regarding their estate. Apparently, they were amending the family trust, transferring funds, and drafting long-term documentation in case something occurred. The letter was a courtesy notice informing me that starting immediately, I was no longer a listed beneficiary. My name was deleted from the will. There was no note. There's no explanation, just chilly, clinical language. You are thus told that your removal from the current inheritance structure has been completed with the full approval of the trust holders. No action is required on your end. I gazed at the letter for what seemed like an hour. It was not about money. I didn't care about the vacation house, the family antiques, or anything else they were passing on. It was about erasing, about being actually removed from the family tree. My phone buzzed a few minutes later. A fresh text. It was from my mother. Please, you not overreact to the legal situation. It's just realistic. Logan has children after all. It does not imply that we do not love you. I didn't respond. What could I possibly say? I wanted to shout, to anger, to drive over there, hold up that letter, and ask her how she could look at my sons, her grandkids, and decide they weren't worth a single fragrance or line in her will. But I did not, because that would imply I still want her approval. But I didn't. Not anymore. I wanted something else. Not vengeance. Not yet. But justice. And the roots of it, the silent, deliberate arrangement, were already sprouting beneath their feet. By July, I had stopped expecting any of them to alter. Not my mama, not Logan, not my father, who had not talked to me since New Year's, unless you include his signature on the estate letter, and certainly not the rest of the family who stood calmly behind them, behaving as if everything was normal. As if my erasure were a private family affair that shouldn't be discussed. Fine, allow them to have their delusions. Because while they were busy ripping me out, I was silently creating something far more difficult to remove. I wasn't simply surviving anymore. I was gaining leverage. Backbone has developed beyond what I had imagined. What began as a basic dashboard now has over 260 paying customers and counting. Maya started full-time in July. We hired 2 developers, a customer service representative, and a bookkeeper, all of whom assured me that I was working on a scalable solution. We relaunched with a simpler user interface, launched our mobile beta, and started onboarding our first corporate pilot client, a local logistics organization with 6 locations around the state. Each victory seemed strange. Every new user I added, every invoice paid, and every piece of positive feedback bit away at the old insecurities my family had planted in me like weeds. But I wasn't doing it just for myself anymore. I was doing this for my sons. Because one day, kids will grow up and wonder what happened. Why did their family treat them like ghosts? Why Grandpa Jack never attended Thanksgiving? Why were there no photographs of them in Grandma's living room? And when people inquire, I won't just tell a narrative. I will have proof. Evidence of who we became when no one believed in us. Of what happens when you stop begging to be recognized and start creating something that cannot be ignored. Still, part of me knew it wouldn't be enough. People like my mother were unconcerned with who you were. They only cared about what you owned. This is why I began preparing the following move. It started simply enough. At least that is how I rationalized it. Maya and I were eating lunch at a small cafe down the street from our new co-working location. She had just finished a demo call with a prospective customer, and I was analyzing our previous quarter's attrition rate when she glanced up from her sandwich and remarked, "Hey, didn't you say your brother's business conducts asset management?" I blinked. Yeah, Logan works for a private wealth group. What? She switched the laptop around. One of their regional subsidiaries had just signed up for a demonstration of our enterprise tier. I leaned forwards. Sure enough, there it was. The request came through our new landing page, which was filled out by an assistant called Tessa and included the firm name Whitest Stone Strategic Holdings, Logan's company. I felt a shiver go down my spine. They probably don't even know it's me, I said. Maya lifted her eyebrow. Should they? I did not respond straight away. I peered at the television as if it had the secret to everything. And perhaps it did, because this was my entry. Because I didn't have a proper job, my family always saw me as a failure. Because I didn't dress appropriately or discuss asset portfolios over alcohol. But now their golden kid is naively pursuing my software for his company. And all of the animosity I had swallowed since New Year's Day began to boil into something considerably more beneficial. Opportunity. I instructed Maya to proceed with the onboarding as if it were any other customer. No special attention, no recognition of our personal relationship. But behind the scenes, I started accumulating all the information I could uncover. Logan's business does more than merely manage retirement assets. Over the previous several years, they'd aggressively grown, purchasing smaller organizations, offering estate planning services, and even brokering family trusts, including my parents' estate restructure, which I learned via public documents, the same estate I had been gently taken from. That night, I was up late researching. I reviewed financial reports, public filings, and news announcements. I looked for interviews Logan had given for industry websites where he discussed conserving inherited wealth and keeping families together via wise planning. The irony was almost humorous, almost. Because here's the deal. Financial institutions, even large ones, are predicated on trust and prudence. Logan, however, was more than simply an employee. He was a partner. His name was linked to numerous family trusts, including a few high-net-worth customers in our area. So, if something humiliating happened, such as a nasty public family conflict, his image could suffer. I wasn't intending on going nuclear. Not yet. But I wanted to make sure I had a complete arsenal on hand. So, I contacted an old college acquaintance named Miles who had gone into law. He owed me a favor from several years ago when I built him a bespoke CMS for his own practice. We met for coffee the next morning. I just want to understand my rights, I informed him. I'm not planning to sue anyone. What are my alternatives if I am removed from a family trust, particularly if I consider I was unfairly forced out? He leaned back in his chair. Depends. Were you the named beneficiary? I was. Then unless they can establish reasons such as malfeasance, fraud, or alienation, things get complicated, especially if you were dismissed without a full notification. Is there any documentation? I showed him the letter, his eyebrows raised. This is poorly written, he mumbled. Sloppy, almost as if they rushed it. I nodded slowly. That's what I thought. He scratched his chin. You wouldn't win anything in court unless you demonstrated improper influence or a lack of mental ability. However, you might contest the procedure, force discovery, bring clarity to their intentions. And if one of the trust advisors was related to the new beneficiary, he said while staring at me, then you'd have leverage. That word again, leverage. I did not want their money, but I wanted them to squirm. I wanted them to know that while I could have made things messy, I decided not to, and that next time I could be less charitable. Following that meeting, I made another call, this time to Grandpa. I had not informed him about the letter yet. He deserved to know. He listened carefully before saying, They think they've buried you, Jack, but they don't realize they planted a seed instead. I grinned. He was not mistaken. The following several weeks were a flurry of activity. Our enterprise client list has grown. I began speaking at local technology gatherings. My LinkedIn acquaintance volunteered to highlight Backbone in a podcast interview on bootstrap software firms. That episode, a 48-minute in-depth look at my life, my children, and why I founded Backbone, went viral in our niche. Guess who left a remark on the post? Logan's employer. Small world, I thought. He wrote, What an incredible story. It's always encouraging to see local creativity upsetting antiquated systems. I pinned the remark. That same week, I received an email from Tessa, Whitest Stone Strategic's assistant, requesting that we adapt their dashboard with private label branding for client data. Of course, I responded. We're happy to accommodate partners, especially family-run firms. There's no smiling face, no signature flourish. This is only a clue, a seed. I then emailed a copy of the podcast episode to my mother. There's no message. There is no preface, just a link. She didn't respond, but 3 days later, I received a call. A blocked number. I responded. Jack, her voice sounded soft. Yeah, I watched the video. Okay. A long pause. You've been busy. I waited. You should have told us, she said. We didn't realize you were doing all that. That's it, Mom. You never asked. She did not refute it. Just sighed. I don't want this tension between us, she told me. I really don't. You removed me from the will. It wasn't personal. It was deliberate silence. Then I just thought Logan's kids. I shut her off. Logan's children already have everything. My children had to prepare their own cookies to get recognized. Even then, no one seemed to care. Another pause. I want to make it right. She eventually admitted. I nodded slowly. Good. Then do it. Because here's the deal. I wasn't asking for an apology anymore. I demanded responsibility. And the last act was already under progress. A date is circled on the calendar. A party I had been discreetly planning. They couldn't hide the reality for much longer. Because I wasn't simply returning. I was returning with receipts. The invitation was sent out 4 weeks before the event. It was not showy. There's no gold trim or embossed text, just a clean, simple email titled Backbone, 1 year in and Thanksgiving celebration. It reached out to clients, partners, mentors, and friends. Individuals who believed in me. People who did not need to examine my resume showed me respect. However, it also went to a few very particular recipients. My mom, my dad, Logan, and Denise, who used to introduce me as the person who did computer stuff. Even Brooke, my cousin, couldn't be bothered to give my boys a juice box on New Year's Eve. I didn't anticipate the majority of them to show. In fact, I assumed they wouldn't, but I wanted the invitation to be recorded. I wanted them to see it because for once, I would not be left out. The space was tiny, yet exquisite. A rooftop location in downtown with string lights, catered cuisine, and gentle music. Nothing extravagant, but far ahead of the tepid lasagna and paper dishes I recalled from family gatherings. Maya handled the majority of the logistics, as one would expect. She was now the COO and the finest hiring I had ever made. We had a slideshow set up in the rear. Simple looping visualizations showing our progress. Milestones, stats, screenshots illustrate the dashboard from its inception to the refined version that is currently utilized by dozens of organizations. Photos of the team, quotes from customers, several press excerpts, and the podcast episode that had quietly gained over 140,000 listeners. It wasn't meant to boast. It was intended to document. The night began like most do. Mingling, handshakes, soft music, and delicate clinking of glasses. Noah and Ethan had their own small check-in table and warm matching outfits. Noah gave out name tags. Ethan manned the iPad for email signups and said, "Would you like to join the wait list?" As if he owned the business. Everyone laughed. Everyone grinned. People noticed them. Around 7:20, I was standing near the bar when Maya gestured toward the elevator. "They came," she muttered. I turned. Sure enough, there came my mother, dressed up, nervously smiling, clutching a purse too tightly. My father stood behind her, rigid and motionless, as if he had been pulled there. Logan entered a few steps later, alone. He was on his phone, perhaps attempting to appear important. I approached. "Glad you made it," I responded simply. My mother looked around. "It's nice." Logan took his phone and pocketed it. "Didn't expect such a crowd." "You weren't on the A-list," I stated bluntly before smiling. "But I figured you'd come for the food." He did not laugh. We exchanged small chat, the empty sort. All sugar, no substance. My father inquired as to the true profitability of the firm. My mother stated the location reminded her of my cousin's wedding setting. Logan inquired whether we utilized any third-party security integrations. "How legitimate are you?" According to traditional financial terminology, I delivered brief responses and prolonged silences. I did not need them to be impressed. I needed them to pay attention. At 8:05, I seized the microphone. People gathered around the little elevated stage at the far end of the room. I was not a natural speaker, but I didn't have to be. All I needed to do was speak the truth. "Thank you all for being here," I said. Exactly 12 months ago, Backbone was only a drawing in my notepad and concepts sparked by irritation, late nights, and simply a lot of being misjudged. There were some light chuckles. I surveyed the room. My mother shifted slightly. Logan seemed bored. I created it because I was tired of feeling like a backup plan. In my personal life, it's like having support staff. And then I realized perhaps that's what the world needs. A support system that does not fail under strain, that does not fade when things get tough. More nods. Maya smiled at me from the front row. So tonight isn't simply a celebration. It serves as a reminder that being missed is not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's a cocoon. I halted. Then I clicked the remote in my palm, and the slideshow behind me switched. A photograph surfaced, grainy yet clear. It was from New Year's Eve. Ethan stands near the door holding the cookies. Noah is clutching my hand. My mother is in the background laughing with Logan. I let it sit there. Several others turned to stare at her. My voice did not alter. Calm. Controlled. I wasn't always there in the rooms that mattered. My children weren't either. But that night, when we were ignored, something changed. I stopped begging for a seat and began assembling the table. Click. The following image depicts our initial prototype dashboard. Then our first office. Then comes the podcast episode cover. Each one hit like a gentle hammer. Click. A snapshot of our enterprise customer list showing Whitest Stone Strategic Holdings at the top. Logan's company. He squinted. Click. An email exchange between his assistant Tessa and Maya about price and onboarding, replete with my courteous concluding line, "Happy to support family-run firms." I looked at him. "You're still utilizing the software, correct?" He blinked. "Did you know? I built it." He became silent. My mother gazed at the floor. I clicked one final time. A snapshot of my sons dressed up, grinning and holding a banner that said, "We're not invisible." The room applauded. Not thunderous, but genuine. Then I stepped down. Later that night, when the throng thinned and the music softened, Logan cornered me near the elevator. "You made your point," he said. "Did I?" He crossed his arms. "Look, you are doing well. I got it. But the entire big unveiling is kind of petty." "Petty," I repeated. "Like being removed from a family trust without a discussion." His jaw clenched. "That was Dad's decision." I cocked my head. "Sure, and you were only the silent partner. Nobody wanted to cut you out, Jack. But let us be honest. You were constantly doing your own thing." "Do you mean living my life without pretending to be perfect?" He didn't respond. I leaned in little. "This is the difference, Logan. You designed your life to impress. I built it to last." I went away before he could respond. Outside, my mother was waiting beside the valet. She gazed at me with moist eyes. "I didn't know," she muttered. "Not really. You didn't want to know." She flinched. "What can I say, Jack, that I apologize? Was I mistaken?" I shrugged. "You can say whatever helps you sleep." She moved closer. "I see you now." I shook my head softly. "No, Mom. You noticed me. There is a difference." She looked down. I did not remain long after that. The boys had already fallen asleep in the vehicle. Maya offered to drop off the equipment. The night remained warm, and the city lights flickered like silent applause. I gazed in the rearview mirror at my sons, and then at the reflection of the building behind me. The one I'd filled. The one I constructed. And for the first time, I didn't feel as if I had anything to prove. I had nothing more to prove because they attempted to write me off. But I wrote my own tale. This time I retained the pen,